All right, so let's present a basic problem. Maybe I got the user, and the user has some properties. So first of all, full name, uh, Peter. Let me just call it name for simplicity reasons. Yeah, name. And then look, I'm going to create a method called get user or get welcome message. Yep. So this is going to be a function that is going to do something like that. So return welcome to JavaScript, and then the name of the user using this dot name, something like that, right? So now I can hopefully do something like console.log user dot get welcome. Before going any further, guys, as I mentioned earlier on Slack, the latest version of VS Code has introduced some changes. So it's now the way you run snippets is a bit different. So yeah, I hope I will be able to deal with that. I just learned 30 minutes ago how to play with the snippets in the new way. But anyway, ignoring the technical parts of the setup, can anyone tell me what is that gonna print? Peter. All right. So to me, the tricky part is clearly here. So can anyone tell me what's the value associated to the word this? Is the whole object. That's correct. That's absolutely right. And the reason is, that's very important, guys. Lexical this refers to the object that call the function. Yeah? So what is the function? Get welcome. Which object is calling get welcome? User. So lexical this equals user. If we run this piece of code, you see, welcome to JS Peter. Yeah? So lexical this refers to the object that call the function. In other words, lexical this is an object. Yeah? I've seen many times in job interviews, developers, offering vague answers. What's lexical this? Yes, it's a structure, unless you do something crazy, and we may talk about crazy things on Thursday, lexical this is an object. And what's the value of the object? Well, lexical this refers to the object that call the function. Which object call the function? User. So then lexical this equals user. So then this.name is the same as running user.name. Yeah? Any questions? No? It's not that complicated, but because of a reason, half of the students are lost already, right? So again, it takes a while to get used to lexical this, but you really need to practice with it, yeah? All right, like that? Okay, that's interesting. What's going to happen now? Let's figure out. Is it still working? Well, in that, yeah, this is a keyword, right? That we are going to use in many occasions. Yeah. Actually, if you remember the class components in React, you will remember that we are using it a lot. Yeah, but I'll talk about that later on. So for now, I just want to present some exercises where we use lexical this, and I want you to be able to predict the behavior of lexical this. Okay? So let me show you a different example. Remember that I got, instead of one user, I got two users. User one, and then I got user two. So user two name is going to be Anne, and welcome to JS this name. Yeah. So what if I do user two dot get full name? What's that going to print? Anne. Why Anne? What's the value? Can anyone tell me an accurate description about what the value associated to lexical this is? Why user two? Yeah, that's correct, user two. But why? Can you explain what the reason why? That's correct. That's the user, that's the object that is calling the function, user2.getWelcome, right? So if I run this code, it's going to return welcome to ES and, as you can see here, right? And that's pretty obvious, right? And you may be surprised, oh, but why is it so complicated? All right, so let's complicate the exercise a bit. Now look, rather than creating a new function for user2, I'm going to save a reference for user1.getWelcome. So now, what's that going to print? You see, so now I got a function called getWelcome. I'm defining the function just once. So then user2 is an object, right? So it has the name, key value, string, easy peasy, but then it got another property called getWelcome. The value associated to getWelcome is a reference to that function above. So now the question is, which player are we dealing with? Are we dealing with Peter or Anne? And why? Why Peter, Maxim? Yeah. So, okay, interesting. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Maxim. What do you think, guys? Do you agree with Maxim? Why? That's correct, Elena. You see, so here is where you realize that half of the students are lost already. What I told you guys 2 minutes ago. Lexical this refers to the object that called the function. Which object is calling getWelcome function? User1 or user2? User2, that's correct. So lexical this is gonna refer to user2. In other words, this.name is gonna be the same as user2.name. That's it. Does it make sense? Any questions? Well, because I'm calling the function once. Of course. Yeah. 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 All right, that's all right, Vicky. Once you get the question, please bring it back. Yeah. What else, guys? Vicky, it's very easy. It's very easy. Which object is calling getWelcome message? Is it user1 or user2? That's it. That's it. Then lexical this refers to user2. That's it. Yeah, the rule is pretty simple. However, developers tend to get confused a lot about that. Let's play with more examples, and hopefully, yeah. It's the way JavaScript works, that's correct at the end, Max, yeah? So lexical this in JavaScript refers to the object that called the function. That's it, you need to get used to that, right? I'll show you. I'm gonna present a couple of examples and then I'll show you a real life issue, right? Something that you've been already dealing with, but you never really ask yourself why I'm doing this, right? We'll see later on. I want you, first of all, to understand the fundamentals of lexical this, and then I would like to jump to a real example. Let me change the problem a bit. Look what I'm doing now. I got user1, right? And then look, on the getWelcome method, look what I'm doing. I'm creating user2. So look at what I'm doing now. And now you tell me, was that gonna, oh, sorry, that's gonna be user one, of course, right? So what's that gonna print? So this is gonna display, welcome to JavaScript, Peter, Maxim? Should we, so you think it's gonna display Peter? All right, let's break, yeah. Why, Vicky? Yeah? All right, guys, let's do something. Let's run the program. Look, we're calling get welcome from user one, right? So on line number four, lexical this refers to which object, guys? That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. On the highlighted bit of code, lexical this, if I do this dot name here, yeah, if I do a console.log, that's gonna display Peter. Yeah, because who called get welcome? User one. Yeah? So here, this refers to user one. So this dot name is equals to Peter. Fine. However, let's continue reading the program. We create a new object, fine, and then look, we return user2.welcome. So we're calling a new function. We're calling that function. And within in that function, we got another lexical this. So where is lexical this pointing to? User one or user two? Here on line number 8. Why user two? That's correct. That's correct. Because it's not because it's inside of user two object, guys. That's because once again, it's the same rule, guys. Say that rule, write it down in your hand or somewhere. So who is calling that function? User two. That's correct. So here, lexical this refers to user two. That's why user2.getWelcome will be translated, will be transformed into welcome to JavaScript and. So if I run it, you see it displays welcome to JavaScript and. Yeah? Something we can do is I can add some breakpoints and we'll see how lexical this dynamically changes depending on whether we are on line number 4 or line number 8. Look, if I run it again, on line number 4, lexical this is going to refer to user 1. Once it works, guys, if it works. Eventually, it's a bit slow, right? That should work at some point. Hello, debugger. Yeah, it does. After 45 seconds. I told you guys that has changed today. I need to do a bit of research about why is it so slow, right? But anyway, it works. So look, if I hover lexical this, you see? Name Peter. You see, guys? It points to user 1. However, if I continue running it, once it stops on line number 8, suddenly, you see, now lexical this refers to an. It has changed because now we are calling another getWelcome function from a different object, which is user2. And that's the way lexical this works. So yeah, what do you think? Questions? All right. All right. So now let's do something. I'm gonna create on my right hand side. Imagine I'm creating a React component. Yeah. You have an excuse to obviously hesitate here, but you have no excuses to hesitate on the right hand side. So imagine I'm creating a new class in React called click counter extends react.component. I don't get syntax highlighting. Maybe let me save the file. Maybe if I save it, so it's gonna be delete.js. What the hell? If you cannot save this document with extension at the end of the name, extension component. Oh, that's a bit strange. All right, can I save it? Oh, why cannot save it with a JS extension? That's a bit strange. All right, let me try to do it again. All right, now it works. That's a bit strange, but anyway. So I got my delete.js component. Obviously, that should be. Let me rename it, guys, because otherwise it's going to be confusing, right? So let me rename it to click counter. So now I got my click counter component on the right hand side, and now I got the constructor. I'm essentially going to build a functionality, and you're going to tell me if that's going to work or not. And that will be a nice way to present, to all give you the first board challenge points of the week. So this.state equals counter 0, and then you got render, and then you got, I'm going to create a fragment. And then I'm gonna have a label, click count equals this.state. I need to zoom it out a bit, guys. If you don't mind, this.state.counter. Let me call it count. Count. There we go. And then what else? We got the button. Increase counter, and here on click equals, I'm gonna call a method called this.increase counter. So now I'm gonna create my new increase counter method, and as part of that method I'm gonna call this.set state counter this.state.counter +1. Something like that. So I'm not, wait a minute, Vicky. I'm not going to ask you to give me a really good motivation about what your answer is, because that's why we are running this workshop. But at least you should be able to tell me if that works as expected or not. Why not, Vicky? All right, fair enough. That's a typo, guys. I didn't want to bother you with that problem. But that's fine. That's fine, Mickey. Brilliant. That's fine. All right. So now, is that gonna work or not? We're also missing the return, okay, and the rent. Fair enough. All right, guys. Sorry. Fine. Long weekend, yeah. All right. Return statement. Are you happy now? So now what? So guys, I need two answers. Is that going to work? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, okay, that's it. If the answer is no, I want you to tell me why it's not going to work. What sort of message are we going to get? Oops, sorry. The on-click, the full click event. What do you mean? That's interesting. What happened if we don't use the arrow function here? What's that gonna return? Yes. I know, that's correct. That's correct. You see, in reality, what you are talking about, Vicky, is something you've been doing. And now I'm trying to share with you why you had to do that. Look, guys, we got lexical this here as well, right? And now I got a question for you. We got a function called increase counter. Can anyone tell me who is calling the increase counter function? The constructor. That's a bit romantic. Why the constructor? The parent component. I'll tell you something. So this is being called by React or by JavaScript under the hood. Sorry again, guys. I didn't want to show that. So look, when you click on the button, React is running some operations under the hood. Yeah? We don't know which operations are these ones. We don't know. But the thing is, we're losing the control. In other words, on line number 8, if we add the breakpoint on line number 8, lexical this will refer to something random, something weird. Yeah? And that will throw an error. You can try that. You can try that. That will probably throw an error. Cannot call set state of undefined, something like that. Yeah? That's correct. And the reason is following that technique, we're losing the control on React. Yeah? Lexical this, and that's why it is so complicated. Guys, lexical this is not complicated because you want to make it complicated. It is complicated because at some point it's not under your control anymore. And this is a good example. Here, on line number 16, that's fine. We can do this.state.count, easy peasy. However, on line number 17, we're telling React, we're passing a reference to the function. And we're telling to React, hey, React, nice to meet you. Whenever the user clicks on the button, because you told me that I can set up that attribute, so whenever the user clicks on the button, please call that method I have created for you. Exactly, we are not calling it, it's React. And because it's React who calls the method, remember lexical this refers to the object that called the method. We are not calling the method. We are not calling the method. Do you see, guys, the parentheses? No, we are just saving a reference. Because we are saving a reference, React will decide when is a good time to call that reference. Yeah? So we lost the control on lexical this. That's the reason why it doesn't work. And now I'm sure half of you remember how to fix the problem. But before fixing the problem, I'm gonna actually change the exercise on the left-hand side. So let's ignore the right-hand side for now. Let's go back to the left-hand side. So now, again, you see, I got a get welcome function on user 1, and that get welcome function on user 1 runs some stuff, and eventually creates a new object called user 2, and it returns user 2.get welcome. And that returns welcome to JS and, if you remember. I need to change that. So yes, give me a second, guys. I need to cancel that. All right, so let me start again. So if I run that code, oh, come on, I didn't want to do that. Do I really need to wait until the debug runs again? No, here we go. You see? So welcome to JS and here we go. Yep. All right, so now the question is, look, we got two get welcome messages, this one and that one. If we were running this workshop before 2015, we'll finish here. We'll say, that's it, guys. However, starting in 2015, things have changed a bit. So all we've seen today remains valid. Of course, it's still valid. However, now we can easily change things. Look, I got a function, line number 6, 7, and 8, called get welcome. Does anyone know a different way of declaring that function? A different syntax? Higher the functions? No. I want to, with arrow. That's correct, Lena. Look, this is an arrow function. You see? Another question is that going to change anything? or on the other way around, should that still display welcome to JS and? Any thoughts? Historic. That's interesting. Historically speaking, we've thought that the classic functions and the arrow functions were the same pretty much. Yeah. So you could use one or the other. However, that's not completely true, particularly when lexical this is involved. Yeah? Classic functions and arrow functions behave differently when dealing with lexical this. Remember, with classic functions, lexical this that are declared as part of the function refer to the object that called that function. Which object called that function? Here you go, user2. Then lexical this equals user2. However, if we refactor the code by using an arrow function instead, then we are breaking that rule. That rule is not valid anymore. That's correct. So when you use an arrow function, now JavaScript doesn't care. It doesn't care anymore who calls the welcome method. It's completely pointless. Yeah? So now, if it's pointless, how does JavaScript know what's the value associated to lexical this? What JavaScript will do is it will check on a parent context until it finds a classic function. So in this particular case, lexical this, what's going to be the value? It's going to be user2? Not necessarily. Not necessarily because we're using a narrow function. So we'll check on the parent context. Here is the parent context because that's the first classic function we have. So what's the value associated to lexical this in that highlighted code, guys? It's going to be Peter. That's correct. That's correct. So somehow now lexical this is being inherited by the parent context. So if I run that code, that's not gonna return and not at all, because by using an arrow function, it's jumping to the parent context. So now, yep, yep, yeah, correct, yep, 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 yep. Yeah, of course. Hmm. All right, wait, Vicky. We'll go there in a minute. I told you, Vicky, please. I told you, let's ignore React. Let's please try to understand the way JavaScript works, and then we'll focus on the example, right? So you see, arrow function, then lexical this, it's inherited from the parent, and then if it finds any value in the parent scope, it will use it. What happened if we now got an arrow function here as well? Can anyone tell me what's that gonna print? That's interesting. That's very interesting. And you are right, actually, Elena. Welcome to JavaScript undefined. Look, you're right. Why? Because here we'll say, all right, lexical this. Are we using a classic function? No, an arrow function, no problem. Check on the parent function. What is the parent function? Here. Is that parent function classic? No, it's arrow. Okay, check parent. Is there anything in the parent? No, there's nothing. Nothing means undefined. That's why, how can we solve the problem? We can't. We can't. What happens if we now put here this, look, in that root scope, this little name equals Tony. What do you think? What's that going to display? and then undefined. All right, so the same process. Let's have a look. Do we have the value associated to lexical this in the current scope? No, because it's an arrow function. No problem. Check one level above. Okay, another welcome function. Brilliant. Do we have lexical this here? No, because it's an arrow function. No problem. Check the parent scope. The parent scope is like the root level of the algorithm. Do we have any property called this.name in the root scope? Yes, now we got it. Look at line number 1. So if I run it, that should display welcome to JavaScript Tony, you see? So now JavaScript had to go 2 levels up until it found a property called welcome to JS. Sorry, until it found a property called name. That's correct. That's correct. If we were working in the browser, we could do something like that. You know, guys, that the window is the global object in the web browser. Yeah. So that will be equivalent. That's not gonna work here because I'm using Node. That's backend. In the backend, you don't have the window object. Yeah? Window refers to the window, the physical window. Yeah? But that's the way it will work in the front end. So in the front end, doing something like that will be absolutely valid. Yeah? Questions? Mm-hmm. That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. We start on line number 9. Actually, right. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that, guys. Let's create user 3. So let's make it more complicated. So now I'm creating, when you call user 2, then look, I'm going to create user 3, which is going to be Mark. And then here I'm going to return user3.getWelcome. So, and then let me change a couple of things. Something like that. So now the question is, can anyone tell me what that weird algorithm that I'm going to share with you on Slack in a minute is going to return? Mark. All right. Why Mark? All right. All right, guys, I'm afraid you are wrong. Look, we start here, right? Actually, wait a minute. Obviously, we need to call the function, right? That's my fault. So we call, the thing is, user1.getWelcome. We are here, right? So what we're here, we got an object, we scroll down, and then we return user2.getWelcome. Okay, so then now we are here. So now that function getWelcome, we are here, and that will return user3.getWelcome. So eventually we will land on line number 10. That's our starting point, line number 10. And then lexical this. Do we have a classic function here, guys? Is that a classic function? No. So then it's never ever gonna be Mark. It's gonna be ignored because it's an arrow function, and it will check on the parent. What is the parent function? Here is the parent function. Is that a classic function, guys? Then that's the value of lexical this. So then, what's that going to display? What's the name of the player here? And that's correct. That's correct. Here you go. You see? And what happened if now I got an arrow function here and then I got a classic function here? Well, Peter, that's correct. It's the same. You see, guys? It's the same principle. Yeah, it is a key, definitely. Yeah. That's all right. That's all right. You see, it's going up and up and up. And what happens if I got the function here, guys? What is it going to return? Why Mark and not Peter? That's correct. That's the inner one. That's correct, Max. That as soon as JavaScript knows what the value of lexical is, it will return it. So it won't traverse the data structure. It will say, all right, lexical this. Here you go. Do we have a classic function here? Yes. All right. So then assign to the value of lexical this whichever the object called that function. So which object called that function? User3. So lexical this will refer to user3. So this.name, it will be the same as user3.name, and that will be Mark. So if we run it, that's going to display welcome to JavaScript Mark. Yeah? You see how complicated sometimes lexical this can be, because it highly depends on your HTML structure. Questions? No? All right. So now back to React, trying to present you a more realistic problem or a real use case scenario where lexical this matters. Do you remember, guys, when dealing with that React component, that the way I told you weeks ago, I told you, I'm not going to tell you why we're doing that, for now just do it. So the way we solved the problem was by doing something like that. Remember? Yep. That's the way it will work. Why? Because now we are using an arrow function, so we are telling React, hey, React, whenever a user clicks on the button, I have no idea how this is going to work, but you know how to do it. So whenever the user clicks on the button, call that arrow function. And because it's calling an arrow function, now it doesn't care who called that arrow function. It's going to be called by React internally with some complex algorithm, but we don't care anymore. Because it's an arrow function, that means that we keep the control. So now lexical this refers to the parent, and the parent is the class itself. That's why by adding that trick, we can easily keep the value of lexical this under control. Yeah? Vicky, you were saying before that you found a different way of solving the problem. That's true. If you search on Google, there are three, four ways we can deal with the problem. Yeah, that's the one I told you. However, there is still some hope if you don't want to do that. There is still a way to deal with that function following that syntax. You know how? I'll show you. On the increase counter function, you can do something like that. You see? So now the increase counter class function is an arrow function. That's a new way, guys. That's a very new way in JavaScript. So if you rewrite the function in that way, now it doesn't matter, again, who called the increase counter method. Because now, by using an arrow function here, or what I'm doing, by using an arrow function here, lexical this will be inherited from the parent, and the parent, again, is the class. So that's a different way to solve the same problem. Once again, either you use an arrow function here, which is very new but trendy, or you use the classic way, if we can call that classic at all, which is by wrapping the function into an arrow like that. Any questions? Again, guys, lexical this, it's a complex thing. And that can actually give you an idea about why React created hooks. Because if you are using hooks, we don't have to use the word lexical this. That's another advantage of using hooks. It simplifies the process of dealing with lexical this because you get rid of it directly. Yeah? But still, it is important. It is important to understand how it works. This Thursday, I will show you some methods. Actually, I'm going to share them with you today as part of the board challenge about how can we play around with the lexical this. How